you should have gotten a message that said.
Yep. Got it.
And I can hear everybody, so let's hope it's getting recorded. If not, we'll use the Zoom. I don't know. We'll figure it out, or we'll just be like, oops. All right, here we go.
Do it again.
Oh shoot, I can't hear that. Can you guys hear that? Okay, that didn't work. I don't know if anybody's, you guys aren't hearing that music, right?
No.
No.
All right, so we might not have music for the intro for this podcast, but welcome to Vet Club. For those of you who were here, the last time you guys were here, we were still Veterinary Journal Club, but we rebranded because we weren't really doing a lot of journal clubs. Ironically, now I am doing a weekly journal club. But welcome back to Vet Hangout number 2. This is a super duper special episode of the podcast. So I'll get to that in just a second, but excited to welcome back Vet Hangout crew from the first time around, one of our most popular podcasts, by the way. We have Dr. Carl Southern, Dr. Kat Temple-Kicera, and Dr. Sam Wigglesworth. And so you guys want to know the super exciting part about this episode?
Yeah.
It is our 100th episode.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let's go.
This is episode number 100, which means we're not actually going to do anything. We're just going to play clips from the previous ones. You guys feel like that's always a sitcom. They're like, it's our 100th episode, and all they do is show clips from like the previous 6 seasons. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to have a real podcast. This is actually how I convince you guys to get all together so we can get caught up. Things. I'm like, what if we recorded it? And you guys like, okay. So I sent a text a little bit ago and was like, guys, it's time for round 2. Yeah. We need to have another vet hangout. And so super excited to have you guys back. I do have a theme planned. This came up a little while ago, but we can also start with just a little catching up with what everybody's doing. I feel like just everybody's got some announcements. Carl, since last we spoke, you got a new job.
It's true.
You've accepted a new position. You don't have started a new job. But you're going to be clinical assistant professor of emergency critical care at the University of Florida starting.
Correct.
Woo! Yeah, applause. I have an applause button, but I don't know which one it is. And the sounds aren't working anyway. So woo!
Thank you.
Yeah. So congratulations. Very exciting. Very happy for you.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. It is exciting. I'm happy and excited, nervous, all in the same feeling. But
that's how you're supposed to feel. That's how I think probably all of us felt at that first job after the residency.
Yeah.
It's a mixture of exciting and scary, and you're like, woohoo, I'm finally an adult, and you're like, oh crap, I'm finally an adult.
Oh crap.
Crap. Yeah. Obviously the big boards hurdle looming. Yeah. That's all right. That's all right. That's right. Yeah, that's the right reation. That's the best feeling is when you're done with the exam. You're like, oh, I failed that, but at least I'm done with it.
Can't wait.
But yeah, we'll be rooting for you. We're all here if you've got questions. Like I said, I'll send more unsolicited study tips.
Take it all.
Yeah. All right. What other announcements do we have that you guys want to share on the podcast? I guess I didn't ask you, Carl. I was like, we are sharing this, whether you want to or not. This wasn't a secret, right?
Not at all. Not anymore, at least.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What did Kat say? All dozen followers. I'd like we have more people listening. She did.
I feel like I was quoting you at some point.
Well, that was a couple years ago when we only had a dozen followers. We got a lot more now. We got a lot of people listening. There's like at least 3 dozen.
Oh, good. I'm almost 19 weeks pregnant. Which is exciting. Yay.
That's why I was like, maybe she doesn't want to share this on the podcast. I was like, fine. I should probably, So exciting. Yeah, congratulations.
That's good stuff right there.
Yeah. 19, you're almost halfway done.
You're halfway.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yes. I was doing the math yesterday and I was like, oh wow.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
That's what Wyatt says. Wyatt says, oh wow.
Yeah, he's like, wow.
He's like, wow, 19.
Congrats,
that just flew by. If you see the look on his face, that's what he was saying. So yeah, super exciting. Super happy for you and Andy both.
Is it twins?
Very, very cool.
Not twins. That was the very first thing at our first ultrasound. Andy's like, I looked for 2 heartbeats. I looked for 2 sex. I only saw one of everything. I wasn't even thinking about that. And he was like,
God.
one baby.
Oh man.
He's smart. You gotta look, man. You gotta look.
I guess, but like, what are you gonna do if it's not like
cry
like,
more?
Deal with
you
it, I
cry,
guess.
yeah.
You cry harder.
Yeah, you're not like, just kidding. We're gonna change our minds. Like, nope, you're in it. Oh shoot. I don't know. I feel like in some ways that'd be good if you decide you wanted more kids, like just be done with it, right?
That was
I don't.
I wish I had two so I could be done. I don't want to go through it again.
I feel like I would hate, like not hate them, but I wouldn't enjoy the moment because you're struggling to just survive more. So I'm glad that it's not two.
Sorry to anybody who was a twin out there.
Right, exactly. We're just crushing all the twins.
Oh no. Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. Like, it's nature. You get what you get, right?
Yeah.
Because if you know what, I feel like if you guys had twins, you'd be like, at first you'd be like, holy crap, this is terrifying. But you know what? This is awesome. Like this is great. This is good. I think that's what you do, right? You make it work.
After the first few months.
After the first few months. Oh, it's
after the
definitely
survival mode.
Yeah. I wonder. I think when they're babies, it probably is like double the workload, but as they get older, it's probably not. I don't know.
You just figure out new game plans is all. You figure out ways to make it work. So
Yeah. Oh. Because I mean, maybe Wyatt is like two babies. We don't know. You don't know either, Sam. He could be
very energetic. They said they wonder how much caffeine we drink to keep up with him. So I feel like it's a crazy baby.
Yeah.
He's four babies.
Yeah. So nobody as a parent, like you don't have you're just making up the scale as you go along. So probably every parent thinks that, right? Like, oh, this is definitely 4 babies worth of baby.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm watching Sam pick him up and down, and it seems like a lot of babies.
This is teaching nap time right now.
Oh, why?
He woke up at 5, so this is his.
Oof.
What time is it there again, Sam? Are you behind us?
She's an hour behind.
It's 9. Yeah.
No, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Wyatt's letting us know. Yeah.
Y'all been up since 5. Time to go down.
No, he's been up since 5. That doesn't mean they were, right?
It is.
We weren't telling Sam we weren't telling Kat about that.
Oh no, I am.
Hey,
well
he's
aware.
the night now. So honestly, getting up at 5 is fine.
Yeah, we'll take it. That's good. That's good sound. Ugh. That's so Sam. Oh well, Sam's gone. Sam, her news is she's chasing her baby down. I wasn't sure if Kat was frozen there for a second or just.
Oh yeah, you froze for a second on my screen.
Oh okay, all right, that's okay. I was like,
what about you, Conlan? You have any new news?
You know what? Not for the podcast, but when we're done, I'll tell you all about it. How's that?
For a nap and I'll be right back.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
We'll see you soon, Sam.
Sounds good.
Yeah. No, we'll save that. We'll save that for after the recording is ended. So yeah, there's maybe one day in the next few months we'll make an announcement on the podcast, but it's not ready for public consumption yet.
Okay.
That leaves a big open.
No, I'm excited.
Oh man. Yeah. So we'll save that. All right.
Sounds good.
So this will be fun. Sam can come back. I guess we just kill time until she comes back, and I'll save the theme for when she comes back. But yeah. So we were talking before. Carl and I were chatting when he came on to help me with sound check. We were chatting because today is match day in veterinary medicine. Kat, were you even aware?
Am I aware?
Match day? Did you know it was match day? Yeah. Because you don't have residents yet, right?
No, I don't, and we can't because it's just me. We lost the clinical list. Yeah, so I can't.
Do you guys have interns at your hospital?
We do, but we through just a change in my hospital last year, there was a lot of revamping and changing of structure, and so we chose to pull out of the match because we felt like we weren't able to give the interns the time they needed.
That's cool.
And so we're revamping all of it this year. I think surgery is still moving forward with their intern. I don't know if they matched or not. I'll find out at like 1:00 when I have lunch with one of the surgeons. But other than that, and I have to find out about medicine because they were staying in the match because they have their own way of doing things. But
yeah. For the rest,
we just had to change things up, and we acknowledged that we weren't giving the interns the time they needed.
Good for you guys, actually. Yeah, kudos for just saying, hey, we're not in a good place. We'll get back to it, but
right.
Yeah.
Rebuild.
well, I just feel like a lot of places treat interns as cheap labor instead of saying, no, they're here for training. Like, you know, yes, they're going to do work and they're going to help in the hospital, but it's specifically, everything needs to be toward like, how are we training them? That's
exactly
right. So yeah, good on you guys. I think that speaks a lot to your hospital and your program and the people running it. But today was match day for those that were in the match. Yeah. So this morning, Carl and I were saying, when I've been looking at intern applications, student applications to get into vet school, residency applications, if I took my applications from each of those stages of my life and just threw them in the pool, I wouldn't even be considered for any of them.
Garbage.
I would either.
Yeah.
No way. No way.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's a problem, because I feel like we're all pretty good, you know, like
yeah, we are.
We should have gotten into the, you know, vet school internship residency. And the fact that our applications it's not that long. I mean, I don't want to do the math, but it, you know, it hasn't been that long that everything has changed so much, but the bar has been set. And I don't know that it's necessarily that institutions have kept raising the bar. I think what happened was it got so competitive that, you know, students kept being like, oh, here's this, I'm doing this, I'm adding all these things on. And then it just became that was the minimum you had to do. And I think it's a problem. I think it's not good.
It is.
So I was at the AAVMC conference this past weekend in DC.
Nice.
Which is basically like all the deans and associate deans and all the people who are running like curricula and things like that get together and they talk about like, what are we doing? So it's not like vet med content stuff, it's administrative type content. And I've been working with a group and we presented some stuff there. And the thing that comes up is like, how are we, admission stuff comes up a lot. You know, I went to a presentation that was really great on what criteria we're using for internships and residencies, and they made a really good point that a lot of places rely too heavily on GPA and class rank for internships and residencies. And that's 100% true. And I totally agree with it. However, if you take that away or you make that less valuable, all you're doing is just shifting other things like your letter of intent and your letters of recommendation and your ability to have done research and all these other things now are worth more. And that's still problematic because one, we know that letters of recommendation are biased, like, you know, good and bad. You know, you're biased for the person, but also they can have their own biases. Like if you work with somebody for 3 weeks and that's it, and you didn't like that, like, you know, your whole career is based on that. It's kind of silly. And then just the different experiences that people can do. One of the things that they brought up in the presentation that I thought was really great is, we value, you know, these students got to do research, or this person was this, you know, president of this club, or they did all these extracurricular things. But like, what about the person who had to just work a part-time job during vet school to support themselves? Or had to take care of family, you know, children or elderly, you know, family members, or not even elderly. Like, what if you don't know? And like, are we valuing that? And, you know, so I don't know, but I agree that GPA is not going to be a good predictor of who's going to be successful.
But I'm not sure
but I'm not sure those other things are like, if you remove, so like we don't wait here at Virginia Tech for our interns. Like the GPA class rank is a small percentage of what we do look at it, but it, you know, it's part of a holistic approach. But if you, the less that counts, it just means other things count more. And we're not necessarily like the VIRMP application doesn't say like, tell us about, you know, the other things that you're doing that make you a well-rounded individual and might make you a good candidate for this. But so we just need to kind of like blow up the system, I think.
That's what I think. We need to redo the way we reselect candidates for everything. We should just like redo them all.
Okay. All right. I want to hear what you guys say. So this is what Topher and I want to do. This is what we think should happen. So to get into vet school or whatever, you pick a thing. You say, what's the bare minimum standard? Like you have to have a 2.0 GPA. I don't even know. You decide what your floor is. And then you have to have taken these courses and passed them. You have to get a C in chemistry and biochemistry and biology, whatever. You decide what is your bare minimum. And then everybody who passes that threshold gets thrown into a lottery.
A lottery? My daughter's in school. She's in a lottery to get into kindergarten right now. And it's literally, we just find out at the end of this month if she gets in or not. That's all it is. And it's just statistics. Yep. But is that any more or less fair than like, what if they were giving your daughter a test to get into friggin' preschool, or, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Now, if you're like, hey, but like we are privileged and we can send her to these great schools and we can do all these other things. And you know, if you could, then you're like, well, no, I want her to have those opportunities. But does that make
Does that make her a better candidate for, elementary school or whatever? But like for vet school, I mean, how many people do you really know that failed out of vet school or failed out of an internship or failed out of a residency? Like they happen. But is it the people who, like, if you had gone back and looked at their application, did they have the worst application? I bet they didn't. I know people I know that ended up flunking out of an internship. One of them was the valedictorian of their class, of their vet school class, and they didn't do well in it. So like, I mean, there's anecdotal reports of that all the time, but the numbers are so few, like there's so few people who don't make it through that you're not even going to be able to draw any conclusions. And so, okay, so step one is it's a lottery system. If you make that minimum threshold, then it's just a lottery. Like literally, I was like, what if we got like one of those bingo things and everybody gets a ping pong ball?
Oh gosh.
And we make it like the NFL draft. It's this big ceremony.
Do you get more ping pongs in there for a reason?
Yes. If you're applying the second time and then the third time. So you get, the only thing that gives you additional weight is persistence because you want it.
Oh my God. Someone
that's your guy.
Things.
You guys don't like it.
Someone that like did all the extra stuff, but still probably would not have been a superior candidate in today's pool. That hurts me a little bit. Unless your floor was considerably higher than like a 2.0 and a C.
Sure.
Then I feel like if your floor was still,
I doubt that would
strong,
be
yeah, sure. But
but like a 3.0 and a B average.
What about if you did a combination of like, say for vet school, you have 100 seats.
Yeah.
And out of that 100, 50 are lottery and the other 50 are
I like that idea.
Traditional, like you meet these requirements, we give you an interview and we select you.
So there's schools that do that now. Like I don't know if they still do. So I know for a long time, NC State, they would admit a certain number of people just based on their grades. Boom, those seats are filled, done. And then they only interview the next round. So that's the problem with that though, so here's what's going to happen. It's just going to mean those 50, those people are like, so yeah, I started my own nonprofit and, I'm the mayor of our town and, like it's, the bar is just going to keep getting higher and higher. And I don't think that any, you're coming in a little late here, Sam. It got exciting. I threw out a pretty radical suggestion.
Oh, okay.
But
radical is the right word.
I know. Yeah, it's pretty radical. Okay, so I want to get your reaction first. So vet school applications, new system. Okay. We create minimum criteria that you meet these minimum criteria. Minimum GPA, 3.0, 2.0, I don't know. We've set minimum GPA, certain classes you have to take and pass certain, classes, very similar to what we have now. But once you meet that minimum threshold, everybody who's applied to that school gets thrown into a lottery and then it's just random chance who gets in.
So it's like internship and match.
Yeah. So internship and match, I would do it the same way. Now the difference is depending on what, like right now, internship is very much that way because there's enough internship spots for everybody who wants them.
Yeah.
The vet school, there's pretty close to enough spots. Like there's not that many people who get turned down. But residencies, it depends on the specialty, right? Like there are like our specialty that you could do it that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Optho, you couldn't do it that way. So like it does depend, but I just think we have this. Okay, I'm going to test this out and see how you guys feel about this. You all know how I feel about prognostic indicators, right? So somebody publishes a study and says, all right, if you do this test, blah, 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 70% of patients that have, a glucose that's below this are going to survive or they're going to die. And you guys know how I feel about applying prognostic indicators to the individual patient. You cannot do it. You cannot do it because it only works for a population.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is we're taking these criteria, we're taking these prognostic indicators in an application for vet school or internship or residency, and we're trying to apply them to an individual. And an individual is either going to succeed or they're going to fail out. That is a 1 or a 0. And we're trying to apply population statistics to individuals. And what happens is certain individuals get euthanized early. I know it's a bit harsh, but people don't get a chance. Some people don't get a chance to prove themselves, even though we know the survival rate for vet school is really high. Like everybody we let in, almost all of them make it through. Almost everybody who does an internship completes it successfully. Almost everybody who starts a residency, like the numbers are incredibly high. And we think that we can apply these metrics to an individual, and I just don't think we can. We all know examples of people, some of us were those people, that didn't meet those classic high standards, and we've succeeded. And so that's my radical suggestion. And when Topher and I were talking and he said that, I was like, oh my God, I just had an epiphany that I need to explain this in the same way we talk about prognostic indicators and how you shouldn't apply those to individuals. And I feel like that's what we're doing with these admissions criteria. And we know the numbers disproportionately affect underrepresented minorities and people of low socioeconomic status. We know that. We know that.
Dr. Conner, did you present this at that conference?
Dr. Conner? That was weird.
I don't know how you want to be referenced in the setting.
Did I present this at the conference? Yes. No, I'm thinking that'll be next year's presentation. I was actually after this conference that I was driving home from DC, so we like a 4.5-hour drive. Gotcha. And of course, poor Topher has to listen to me for all of this. And so we're spitballing these ideas. Now, what I was presenting, actually, I was working with a group from some of the Northeastern schools. We are putting together, are you guys familiar with CBVE, competency-based veterinary education? Not really. Okay.
No.
That's all right. I'm not going to go into it a lot, but there's a group of people, not a lot, a group of people who are putting together basically that to get through vet school, rather than like you had an A or a B or C, like, can you do these things? Can you get a history? Can you do a physical exam? And it's based on your competencies. So they have 9 domains. Me up. Yeah. Oh, no. In fact, there's probably people at Florida that are doing that. You should talk to the people, but yeah, this is the thing. So it's a real thing. And probably the AVMA is going to adopt it formally, I would say, within the next 10 years. A lot of schools are officially adopting it as their framework. But we were saying, hey, we need a 10th domain. We need one dedicated to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And so we were writing competencies that same kind of thing. Can you take an accurate history? Can you do a physical exam? These would be in the realm of DEIJ. Like, do you know what a microaggression is, and can you recognize it if you see it? Like that, we're proposing maybe that could be part of vet school curriculum. That's what my group was presenting. We've been working on this for the past year, and we were like we're not ready. It's not final, but we're ready for some feedback. So we presented it to this group to get some feedback, like what's working, what are our gaps? And that was really good. But just these are the kinds of things that come up at this conference. And so, so I think you're right, Kat. I think I'll have to present that next year. Here's my idea, just blow up the system. But then like we had that epiphany in the drive home where it's like that analogy. And I was like, oh gosh, that's probably why I'm so bothered by it, because it's the same thing. We're trying to apply population statistics to an individual.
Are you going to use your actual example, which is definitely the GDV paper and lactate?
Probably. That seems like a good one. Why wouldn't I? We shouldn't be euthanizing dogs with GDV because their lactate is a certain level, and we shouldn't be eliminating students from achieving their goals because they miss some arbitrary cutoff of GPA. I'm not sure we should. Or the GRE. We all know the GRE is a good predictor of who's going to be a successful vet, right? Like what? So many schools have gotten rid of it. They've dropped it completely, but they're still using these other things. And I'm like, but you get one crappy letter of recommendation, you're out. Like one person, you get 4 letters, 3 of them are great, and one of them is like, oh, this person has interpersonal skills, and then they're toast.
Or you get letters that are great letters, but then they say, well, these letters carry no weight because these people are not big in the community.
Right. Yeah, they're not the right specialists. They're not the right letters. Yeah. Or that was one of those was
great a words for you. They explained everything for you perfectly. But they're like, I don't know this person, so they're useless to me.
Yeah. Or you write a letter of intent that's kind of weird, and I'm just like, well, that person seems weird. I don't, like that's not fair. And I've had that reaction before. Like I could be honest and be like, ooh, I don't know if this person's going to be a good fit, and that's not fair. I shouldn't be able to do that. But that's the system we have, and it doesn't seem right. So anyhow, but. I don't know. What do you think, Sam? they both said what they thought before you came back.
Oh, I missed it then. I don't know. Part of me is like, I feel like there's like, I agree with you, like a certain baseline I almost think should be met. But then it's like nice to know their extracurriculars. The person who maybe, just barely hit the cutoff GPA wise, but has like 6 different jobs listed, like that person worked their butt off to maintain all of that and work those jobs. Like, do those things, obviously it depends on the reviewer, and it depends on how much how heavily do you take things, as far, especially if they get one letter that's kind of derogatory and then they have like that borderline GPA, is that one going to get tossed when the person, clearly worked like a dog all through, high school and undergrad. versus just the lottery. I don't know. The lottery just makes it sound like
it makes everybody uncomfortable.
Yeah. And you have people who work really hard, but yeah, I do think that the system unfortunately will negate some kids that are going to be great candidates and great veterinarians, and they unfortunately get missed in the system. But I mean, there's not going to be a perfect system. So the lottery, yes, makes me slightly uncomfortable, but otherwise it's personal opinion on things that get.
So here's the other thing you probably didn't catch, but the only way that you can increase. So my plan was to make it like bingo, and everybody who applies gets a ping pong ball with their name on it. And the only way you can get extra ping pong balls is if you're applying for the second time. Like if you applied last year and you didn't get in, which means if you keep applying, you'll get in as long as you meet the minimum threshold. You will, like statistically you will, because eventually then the third year you get 3 ping pong balls. And Topher said he would do the math to figure out like at what point are you pretty much guaranteed. And he's thinking it might be the third try. So if you're persistent and you're like, this is what I want to do, you will get it. You just might not get it in the timeline that you wanted. You might get lucky and get it the first try. And that's obviously going to depend on how many people apply.
Well, that's how it is now too, though. Sometimes it happens that way. Like sometimes
people keep trying, but it's usually because they were told, oh, you need to do this in the next year. You need to get that large animal experience, or you need to go work with this person, or you need to increase these hours. Okay, so this was a stat that came out in the AVMC meeting that I was like, that is messed up. Okay, so most vet schools have a requirement. You have to do a certain number of hours of veterinary or animal experience, right? Like most of us had to do something like that. We had to log hours, and the range for what the minimum is somewhere around like 150, 250, like those are the hours that you're required to do. The average number of hours that the students that got admitted into any vet school, the average number of hours of veterinary experience they had,
30.
Guess. 30? Nope. The minimum requirement was 150 to 250. Like they vary.
Oh, so then 300.
What do you guys think?
150.
150.
This is right rules. I'll go high. I'll go 400.
All right. How about 2,400 and some odd hours?
Shut the freak up.
That's a problem.
2,000 hours.
Yes. Those were the numbers from VMCAS. Yeah. They presented that. And I was like, what?
No way.
100%. So students are logging
2,000.
Yes.
That's not real.
Students are logging hours for years and years and years. It is real. And
when
that's
do you start
problem.
Middle school?
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah. And here's the thing. Some of these students get groomed from it, and I'm not even sure they want to do this. Like we're getting these students that I don't. So that's what I'm saying. So the bar is being raised astronomically high. You know how many people couldn't possibly do that? Somebody who has a couple full-time jobs, Sam. Yeah.
I didn't decide until I was in undergrad, like my second year that I was going to apply.
So now you've met the minimum criteria, but if you're being compared against people who've done 2,000 hours worth, now I don't know I asked at this meeting, I asked because I was like, wait a minute, what was the average number of hours? And was it, what about the people who were not admitted? Because was that significantly lower? So were people using that as a metric, or is it just that everybody is submitting ridiculous number of hours? And they didn't have that answer for me. But
2,000?
But that's, 2,400 hours.
I hope they paid for those hours. They're all volunteer hours.
Again, that's all over the place. But that's telling me exactly. But like, what kind of privilege does it take to be able to do that?
Correct.
And who are we not allowing in because it has gotten out of hand? And that's why I want to go to a lottery. So anyway, that was not supposed to be the theme for the talk today. But I wanted to wait for Sam. Is Wyatt sleeping now?
Yeah.
All right. Got the monitor. We're ready to go.
Hey, we had that one.
You had that exact one?
Yeah, it's broke now.
They wore it out. I love it. Or maybe you just turned it off. Is that what it was? You're like, oh no, we dropped it. Yeah. Oh, just crushed it. Was that like Office Space? You get to a certain point in your life and you're just going to go out therapeutically and just crush it.
Yeah.
That seems like a thing that you would do as a parent. Okay. So we're going to change gears a little bit because the theme that I had originally, we had this idea when I reached out to you guys. We wanted to talk about like intimidation and being intimidated and people who are intimidating and
So you wanted me on this podcast.
No, I wanted everybody's perspective. Because I was on a search committee and I was talking with some people and they were just mentioning somebody in the hospital who was very intimidating. And like, you guys know me, I'm kind of like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Why? Like, what about this person is intimidating? And it was like a technician, and they were like, well, she's scary. I'm like, scared? Like, is she holding a knife? Like, what does that mean? Like, is she threatening violence against you? Because I think that's illegal. Like, what about this person is scary? Because like, I don't know, like if you're holding a knife, yes, that seems intimidating, but like in a work environment. So what are the kinds of things that you guys, because I've also been told on occasion that I'm intimidating, which I think is ridiculous. I've never wielded a knife at work. But I think there's, sure. And I think there's probably things about me that's fair, but I also think plenty of people are not intimidated by me, and can come up to me and ask me questions and feel like I'm approachable. Like for me, intimidating is the opposite of approachable. That maybe that's not right, but that's kind of how I think about it. And I don't know. I'm just like, I'm working with people and I have a question. I was like, well, I'm going to ask a question. Like, I'm not afraid to go up to somebody or, hey, I need help with something. I'm going to go ask for help. But so I wanted to get your guys' perspectives, you know, and has that changed? Has how you feel about that? Has that changed as your positions have changed, as you've moved through the profession? That were there scenarios or people or situations that were intimidating, or people that you were intimidated by that you think back now and you're like, what was I thinking? Or you're like, no, that person still intimidates the bejesus out of me. So that's where I would like to, I want to hear you guys' perspectives. Who wants to go first?
Ladies first.
Nice. All right, Kat.
Well, I can say that I've been on the receiving end of your intimidating.
Of mine? Of being told you're intimidating.
Yeah, to which it was mostly in the residency.
Yeah.
And to which I'd be like, I don't even remember talking to, like, it was an interaction that I didn't even remember.
Like, who are you?
Well, in the sense of like, I actually remember one, it was during, you'll remember this, Bobbi, the oversight of 8 weeks in a row of overnights I was put on. Remember that?
Okay.
During the second year of my residency. And I was very tired because I was on 8 weeks of overnights in a row. And it was probably in the middle of that. And one of my faculty during the beginning of my next shift was like, hey, I just got to bring something up to you. The students during rounds are very intimidated by you. And they feel like, you know, like I don't remember the exact conversation, but I remember at the end, she was like, I just have to tell you. And then we both honestly just kind of laughed about it and moved on, because it's the nature of being exhausted and just wanting to get through your shift. And you're not really being silly with people. You're just like, these are the facts about
just get it done.
Like, move on.
Yeah.
And you know, she had been there for that rounds. And so she knew what did or didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it was just the, and I remember that because I remember saying, I interacted with them literally in cage side rounds. That was my only interaction with them.
And that's when they felt intimidated.
Yes. And so it was kind of like,
okay.
In that moment, I was like, sorry, but I'm the only doctor here. I'm in charge of the entire ICU. I have to oversee the intern. I need to get through these cases, and you just need to feed me the information, and then we need to move on. And that probably comes off in and of itself very intimidating and unapproachable, as you said.
Everybody would be intimidated by that.
But I think
like
in
some people would be like,
it's just, it is this, if the person, my perspective is the other person on the other end that feels intimidated needs to acknowledge the situation.
Right.
And like what that moment represents and realize if it's personal or not.
Right. So these were students that had said they felt intimidated by you.
Yes. To which, like, again, thankfully the same person that gave me the information had been there and was like,
nothing
I was there.
Like, okay.
And I mean, you were my faculty, right? So I mean,
no,
both
I don't
Sam
remember
was faculty and resident mate of mine, and Carl is resident mate. So I mean, you guys can speak to it. Like sometimes when it's,
I've never felt intimidated by you, Kat.
Same.
I never thought you would be.
I also know your personality. I could see someone being sensitive who just thinks that being short and to the point is intimidating, and it's being like, I won't tolerate anything else, and I know more than you. How dare you not know this? And here's what it is. Yeah. But it's I think if you don't know the personality of someone, it's harder to put some of those things. Yeah. And you don't know the context. They've never worked 8 weeks of nights. They don't know what. I mean, maybe they have.
Probably not.
Not in that capacity.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So I kind of realized personally after a while, once people actually spoke to me outside of like giving me rounds or whatever it was, if they actually like not got to know me, but just had a normal conversation,
under different
it all faded.
It seemed fine. Yeah.
And they would tell me, I had multiple, especially students say, you were so intimidating when I first met you. And now you're like my favorite, or, you know, I don't want to sound like that, but like we got along really well.
Sure.
And I can't, you know, like
everyone's favorite. No,
you know what I'm saying. Like they came friendship.
Yeah. It's like a complete 180. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, you just had to like realize the situation I was in and the weight in which I was carrying in that moment, and nothing about it's personal, to the point where I couldn't pick you up out of a lineup the next day.
Right.
That's how non-personal.
I don't remember what you said. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Question. Carl, Sam, have either of you guys ever been told you were intimidating?
Never in my life.
Okay. You've never had anybody tell you, maybe because you're that intimidating, they're afraid to even tell you how intimidating you are.
I think I'm the opposite of intimidating for most people. I've never been told I've been intimidating. Never.
I've indirectly been told. I've never had like a supervisor say, people are coming up to us and saying that you're intimidating us. But I've heard like indirectly from students, like, either we thought you were going to be intimidating, like you said, Kat, people that were like, okay, we thought you were going to, like from a distance, like before we got to know you, we thought you were intimidating, but now we don't. And then I have heard from colleagues that they've heard, most recently, we were interviewing a candidate here, and for one of our ER faculty positions. This was a while ago now, maybe a year ago. And the candidate was having a meal with somebody else on the search committee. And the candidate made a comment to the person they were sitting with about me, saying, man, I wouldn't want to get on her bad side, or I wouldn't want to cross her, or something like that. And I was like, well, like, who do you want to get on the bad side of? Like, that's kind of a weird thing. Like, I was like, no, you shouldn't want to get on my bad side, because I'm also going to be like, hey, this is a problem and we need to address it. So like they took that as, hey, you can come across as sort of intimidating. I was like, okay, thank you. Okay, so yeah, I've definitely been told at various times that I can be intimidating in various contexts, and it's very easy for me to. Usually there is like that power imbalance, like it's a student or somebody who you do have like some position of authority over. But I've heard it from people who like we were equal, and I'm like, well, how on earth? I can understand when there's a power imbalance, because there is that potential, right, for me to have influence over your grades or your career in some way, shape, or form. And so I do understand that. But when it's like equals, it's like, well, wait a minute, I don't know. I have no power over you. I have no authority over you whatsoever. But there's something else to it. So, all right, we're going to flip it around. When have you felt intimidated by somebody, and what were those circumstances, if you don't mind sharing, without using names? Unless it's mine, you can call me out, that's fair. But do you guys have instances where you're like, yeah, I found this person really intimidating, and maybe it was like, and I still do, or I eventually, kind of like Kat's situation, I got to know them and it changed? What are your experiences with the other side of intimidation?
You got one, Sam, or you want me to go?
I think the one that sticks out most in my mind was, honestly, when I was a student, it was one of the ICU technicians at the school I went to.
Yeah.
It was across the board. I wasn't the only student. We were all kind of terrified of that technician, and she owned the ICU. It was hers. We weren't allowed to like and things like that. And it was just, I remember like picking up a Doppler to do a blood pressure, and it was like, don't touch that. You can't do these things. And I was immediately, I stocked the beds, and I can't even, you couldn't put on the treatment sheets either, because they were critical patients. So it was.
So she would yell at you.
Yeah. She kept, it was her system, her place. So that was, and I remember just being terrified. And that was part of the reason why I didn't really love ECC, was just that experience. And I know other people have had experiences. Fortunately, I feel like where I did my internship and residency, honestly, I don't have any complaint about the techs there. I can see an experienced tech being really intimidating for a new doctor who's not sure. Yeah. Honestly, I just have like the fondest memories of the techs that I worked with during my intern year, who were like, you should do this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Those are the best.
but I can see that being a common thing just based on experience level and that kind of inherent discomfort that is, especially in ECC, the world of quick decisions and sick patients, that kind of came into play for a lot of vet students.
So I can understand as a student getting yelled at like that. That's going to, were you intimidated by this person before that had happened? Like through reputation?
No, I don't think I knew about her before. I mean, I think there was like more like whisperings of like, be careful in the ICU.
But you were just like, whatever, I'm going to do my thing. And until you got yelled at, then you're like, oh, that's legit.
I also didn't think I really knew how the workflow was or what the set rules were, whether that was me not paying attention enough to or whether it was actually just that it wasn't that clear. It wasn't.
Well, I can't believe that they let students touch Dopplers. I mean, that's insane. What the heck? You don't touch that.
Accurate when done by skilled personnel. So.
Oh my gosh! I got to tell her something. News break. They're not accurate then either.
Random number generator.
That's right.
Bobbi, I literally quoted you the other day. Yes. I had a post-arrest patient, and we got a couple different values on a Doppler, and I was like, I like the highest one best. We'll go with that one. And I said that knowing that if you were actively saying, if Bobbi was standing next to me, she would just go on her, soapbox of like, we only believe the numbers we like. And this is
I would have just laughed, because if you acknowledge it, I think that I'm okay with it. If you're just like, you know what, do it again until we get a better one. Like, I think that acknowledgement, but I would have been like, why are you doing it? Like, surely somebody has something more important to be doing. That's really what I would have complained about. But do it until you get the number and then stop. Like, let's not run it anymore.
Stop checking.
Exactly. And then it's fine. It's funny. So, so you had, I feel like technicians can be very intimidating for students, interns, even clinicians sometimes. And it is very much this, like, it's honestly kind of impressive when you think about it. Like, when you think about, usually I think about intimidation being a power imbalance, and you have somebody who, like, I mean, how much did that ICU tech have on you as a student? Like, did they grade you? Were they going to be writing you letters of recommendation? Was anybody going to be reaching out to this person to write
so I wonder if they asked their, I don't really know if they asked their input for grades and things like that.
What are the odds? What are the odds that one person has a huge influence on your grade? Pretty slim, right? So this person has just been like, I have this power, it is mine. And everybody's like, I guess it's yours then, like
power to make you feel kind of confident, which I feel like as a student, you're like, I'm sort of getting there. Like I could handle some patient. You're like, this person has taken this power, but that does require us to some degree to give them that power, right? To like, let them be like, I guess you do have that power, like at some point, like, do you question that and be like, wait, who are you? But I also didn't know her as a person, right?
Sure.
What if she works like 2 jobs and this is her second job and she's just like, I just need to get
she'd gone 8 weeks of overnights. She was having a bad run of it. But I do feel like there's a power imbalance, but it's not a completely one-sided thing. Like, somebody can't take all the power without our consent in some ways. It's hard as a student, right? Like, so I think the lower you are, you're just like, I don't know what to do, and I don't know how things work around here. I'm just trying to keep my head down and not fail out so I can go through, get my degree and go on and be a vet. So I do understand that whole, like, not wanting to rock the boat. I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't really understand that because I've always been a boat rocker, but like, logically, I understand why people would choose that. It's just kind of a weird thing. All right, Carl, do you have examples or an example?
I have an example that actually involves you, and but it's not the way you think though. This was, I don't remember if it was either my intern year or my first year of residency. I don't remember which one it was, but you had saw a patient in the ER, and your final, like at the end of it, was supposed to transfer to internal medicine was the short of that. So of course, we control transfer lists. So I put on transfer list, transferred to internal medicine. And the next morning, the medicine faculty comes into the ICU and has like this huge blow up with like yelling, and this patient is not supposed to come into our medicine, it's supposed to go to surgery. We saw it and blah, 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 and it was like this huge blow up, and you could tell that they were trying to intimidate me to transfer it to a different service and not theirs. It was their intention was to intimidate me. And I was sitting there like, I was on pause for a minute, like, man, because I thought this person and I had a good relationship before. Now it wasn't like, hey, can we talk? Can I just ask you about this patient? Nothing. It was just like instant yelling, instant arms in the air, huge blow up. And the texts from the back of the room, like, whoa, is this guy like, seriously?
Yeah.
So my response was, I just said, well, Dr. Conner said it was transferring to medicine. So that's where I sent it. and they were like, well, it doesn't matter. If you read the discharges from previous before, it says to go to surgery. And I'm like, well, my faculty told me to transfer it to medicine. I said, but I'm pretty sure if we just talk about it, we can like figure it out. And they're like, we're not talking about anything. It's going to surgery. So, I was just like, all right. They were like, well, can you send the transfer list? I was like, well, I'll send a new one out after we talk about it with, faculty. I don't remember who the faculty was that day, but it's like got into this, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, I think some kind of way, I think Dr. Shayer was there. And he was like, maybe you guys talk about this in the hallway or something.
Yeah.
You know how Shayer is.
Yeah.
But, and I was like, I'm fine to talk about it. But I was like, I think it just needs to go to medicine until we figure it out. And then, like, long story short was, later on, like a few days later, I went to that person and I was like, I asked them, I was like, what was that about?
Yeah.
And they told me, they were like, they were just frustrated in the moment.
Yeah.
And it still was unexcusable. They definitely tried to intimidate me, but they owned up to it and told me, like, I was frustrated in the moment, had a lot going on. And I think that happens a lot with intimidation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, you have these like boiling points and then you just come in and you blow up on people. And some people, it carries with them for forever. And that person is forever intimidating to them. And that happens with a lot of our people that we work with. They have these reputations that, they blow up and then they're forever intimidating. And probably, I'm sure somebody probably at, Kat, that couldn't even be your situation. Kat, somebody could have said before when she's on overnights, man, like stay away from her. She's, the worst to talk to when she's on overnights. And those students ratted you out to the faculty, like she was intimidating us in rounds. And
Thankfully,
you were just
for me, like, faculty was like, yeah, it's fine.
It's fine. Exactly. But yeah, I that's the one, there's all kind of instances, but that one always just sticks with me. Because even to this day, that person and I are still like, we have a good rapport. I can call that person right now.
Good.
Yeah. And it's just one of those instances where I think that in other situations that would turn into something like I'd hold a grudge against that person. I'm never talking to that person again. They like yelled at me in front of people.
Yeah. But I think a lot of other people would have caved under that situation, Carl. They'd have been like, okay. Like, let me do the thing. So, because I do think, I want to point out two things. One, I must not be that intimidating because you invoking my name, Conner, that didn't have any impact whatsoever. So I'm obviously not very intimidating. Otherwise, they would have been like, oh, Conner said in that case, then we'll take it.
No, I don't think that was the case.
No, but I do feel like in being intimidating in a situation like that is almost a learned behavior, right? Like if I blow up and I yell and I scream and I get my way, that encourages me to do it again next time. Yep. And so if you have a situation like you're like, hey, you're blowing up, like you're frustrated, but we need to have a conversation. This isn't just like you blow up and therefore you get your way, kind of like with children. Like if they learn that every time they throw a tantrum, they get what they want, tantrums work, right? Like that. Or you say, no, this isn't how we're going to do it. And we need to kind of find a different way to solve this problem. Because that's really what that is. That's like an adult tantrum, right?
For sure. So, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. And
that's embarrassing on them too. Like
it is.
You should know your typical, and you should know how to.
In front of the whole ICU, all the techs, there was like a couple students in there. I'm just standing there like, what is really going on right now?
Why am I being yelled at? Yeah, I was just doing what I was told. Yeah, you don't need to yell at me. We can talk about this. We can't talk about this. Like, no, we can. We're gonna have to. Otherwise, okay. I also do you remember what happened to the case? Did it go to medicine or surgery?
Do you really want to know? I do remember.
No, that's the answer. Yep. Okay. Yep. Dang.
Yep. I remember the faculty that was on now, and it all came back to me. It was one of our more people pleasing faculty.
No.
Just by saying that, Carl, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Oh man. It's tough. Now, again, like we can have a conversation, right? Like you can have, hey, we think this really should go to surgery for these reasons. And that's fine. Like I don't have a problem with you disagreeing with where a case should go, but it's the way you handle it. We deal with that here. Obviously, you guys know we deal with this all the time. We've all dealt with this transfer, people not thinking the case was transferred to the service it should have been. It's like, okay. And when people come and they talk to me calmly about it, and it's like, all right, I hear what you're saying. All right, here's why we went with this. This was our thought process. Is that okay? All right, we can see that. All right, that makes sense. Or I go, oh, okay, I hear where you're coming from. Yeah, not a problem. Let's see what we can facilitate. But also like, well, we had sorted this out, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, cases change, like things change. You know, so we need to be able to adjust our expectations and do what we think is right. I don't know, but
no longer have to deal with transfer problems anymore.
So what, because you just keep everything or?
Yeah, it's really, really frustrating to manage something with like 7 different chronic diseases that don't go together,
yeah.
Everybody's got that.
Yeah. We don't have soft tissue surgery here. So like we have 4 cases on ER right now that all need like anesthesia and like major wound care stuff. Like, oh, this probably should see a soft tissue. Oh, and then we have this like the most adorable cat ever who had, I think he was just like a bad idiopathic cystitis, but like his penis is like disintegrated and he has to have a PU. Yeah. And, but we don't have soft tissue surgery. Like, it's just like, we're not doing PUs on ER, but we are doing a lot of wound care and that kind of thing. And I mean, in some ways it's good. You guys know we did a lot of wound care and things like that. But yeah, it's tough when you don't have the service that you want. And, you know, you do the best you can, but man, but yeah, those frustrate me more than anything. It's like, this shouldn't be us. This shouldn't be us. Whoa. Let's just take a moment. Let's take a moment. Can we all agree that somebody needs to take care of this animal? Can we just at least start with that at some point the animal needs care? None of this is the pet's fault. None of this is the client's fault. Can we just sit down and then talk calmly as adults and say, you know, where do we go?
It was an airway case too. It was a case that you were recommending that they
work it up,
image the airway and do a workup, and medicine was saying it needed surgery for the airway. Is what they were saying.
Yeah. Which again, like, you know, those, we can disagree about that. We can, but it can be a conversation. Like it should be, hey, here's why we don't think this needs this. It's like, well, what, like, does surgery know what specific procedure it needs? Because it sounds like maybe there's more to it. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I might have been wrong. I might have been wrong, but again, it coming in and yelling about it is.
It didn't warrant a huge blow up like that. Like,
so that was a situation where somebody was trying to intimidate you and you just put up a wall and you're like, no, not doing this. Which is not easy to do because there was a power imbalance in that situation.
For sure.
Is that because you've just gotten to the point in your life where you're just like, dude, no, not dealing with this? Or like, have you never, are you just not easily intimidated? Would you say?
Not anymore. I've definitely been to the point, you know, especially in vet med where, you know, this was early on in my career, that'd have been a no brainer. Like, oh, okay, here you go. 2 clicks of a button. I can change this for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just not where I am anymore. Even at that time, even more so now, but just not in that predicament anymore. I understood the situation and it didn't just need to be an automatic here. Let me give you your way. It needs to be, let's figure it out.
But you do have to get to a point either in your life or your career where you feel confident enough that you can say no when somebody would otherwise intimidate you. And so it does, like I said, for me, it comes down to like, there does need to be a power imbalance, or again, either real or perceived power imbalance. But you do at some point get to a stage where you're just like, nope, not going to be intimidated by you anymore. Or the one that really confuses me is you have somebody who's just like really advanced in their career. Like they're really good, really well known in something like, oh, that's the person who described, but they invented the TPLO. Like, and I went and listened to him talk. Oh no, I wouldn't go ask them a question. That would be intimidating. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? This person, you know what I mean? Like those situations where, oh, it would be too intimidating to go up and ask this person a question or to do this. It was like, there isn't a real, at least from my perspective, there's not a real power imbalance. Like somebody who's further along or knows more than me, like, well, that's not intimidating. That's just cool.
That's who I want to talk to.
Right. That's a resource.
Yeah.
But I do feel like sometimes, you know, people feel that way. Like I'll hear that from students, like, oh, that's the person who said this or does this, and that's really intimidating. It's like, no, they're a resource. No. That'd be like saying a textbook is intimidating.
Even with clients, Connor, when clients intimidate students, you know, and they like bully them and run over, those are the ones I want. Like, give me. Like, I want that client. You know, I love that when the student comes out like, this client just yelled at me. I'm like, oh, let's go, turn around, let's go back in together. Like, I love
know.
it.
I love scolding grandparents.
Yeah.
Like, it's just great.
Yeah, it's not accepted, and the student appreciates that so much when you back them up.
Yeah,
like they love it. They're inside. They're just like smiling and giggling and laughing. Like, yeah, take that, take that.
Yeah, it's
they
huge.
Love it.
But I do think people learn that if they behave a certain way in a lot of situations, and I think it's a lot of conflict avoidance, right? Most people are just like, I don't like conflict, and I want to avoid it at all costs, and it's easier a lot of the time to just be like, okay, you can get your way.
Sure.
But I'm pretty stubborn, and I'm like, no. Carl, you're like me, you're stubborn. You're like, bring it.
Not happening.
So Kat, how are you on the feeling intimidated side of the spectrum?
I think I've definitely, I agree that the power imbalance is probably when I was most intimidated in life, in my career. And as I've gotten to, I'm still the concept of certain people or the thought of them intimidates me. There's certain people in our world that I'm like, oh my gosh, like the first time I called Cornell to transfer a case, I can't even tell you about the case at this point. It was just, I remember the phone call to Cornell and Dan Fletcher's who I spoke to. And I'm like, you are everyone I studied for boards. Like you are all over papers and lectures.
But he's like the nicest, least intimidating person. Like actually,
nicest. I know,
he's so great. But it's a name.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And I've seen him present at conferences. I've never heard a bad word about him, but he was still the concept of him being this superior being within our world, which I think if he heard this, he would just laugh.
He would. I'll tell him about it next time I talk to him.
It's just like those things. And even just like the first time I met Claire Sharp and just like certain people, and they are wonderful, and they're a wealth of knowledge, and they're so kind. But the thought of them was very intimidating. Yeah. And, it's, once you meet the person, you're like, oh, this is a person.
Yeah.
They're just,
what do you know?
Yeah. But in my daily interactions, I think to what Carl's saying, I definitely there are definitely some individuals that get heated a lot faster at the current hospital I work at. And I've come to just use communication skills to kind of calm down the situation. I think the idea that you can encourage an environment by representing it, by not getting heated with them, by keeping your cool and then just kind of guiding and having a conversation, you can really quell the situation.
Yeah.
And then
you can't be intimidated, right? Because you get intimidated, you shut down. You can't escalate it either. So you got to find that sweet spot where you're not intimidated. You feel like you can stand up.
Standing your ground.
Yeah. Like we're going to have a conversation. I'm not going to make this worse. Because I feel like people either will escalate and they're like, argue back. I can do that sometimes. And I know shocks you guys, I'm sure. But you can't just like roll over either. You got to find that sweet spot.
I think it comes down to realizing that funny enough, I learned this in the class we called feelings class. It was the end of life course at UF the first time they ever did it.
You called it the feelings class?
We called it feelings class. It was Lap of Love that came in, but they're all two creators or founders of Lap of Love are like highly trained in communication skills, which is all what end of life is.
Right.
And that's what I learned the most from that course. But I took from that ways that I could speak to clients, and it's actually remarkable, but I use it in my day-to-day, between doctors conversations in that moment where you have to continue the conversation versus just saying no, but you continue it at an appropriate level. And eventually they're going to mimic how you are as well. Yeah. There's also the moments where you just need to not interact because there's too much emotion. And then you can come back together. And I think eventually you build that relationship. So there is no intimidation, but like you said, you can't go into it being intimidated. Yeah. You just have to acknowledge that people are human, and maybe they are having a really bad day, right? It's just, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe what you don't recognize is that situation has happened 4 times in the last 2 weeks. You were not part of it, but now you're at the tip of the iceberg where you're like, why am I receiving all of this backlash for something that's so minor? Yeah. But either way, so I think that that's a big part of learning how to not be be intimidated, is recognizing that it's probably not you. There are definitely moments where like something I've done or said, or the way I said something fueled a moment without realizing it, without intentional. Right. And then you kind of say, oh gosh, like I didn't mean for that to come off. But for my approach for that is quickly acknowledging it and saying, hey, I wanted to talk to you. I want to talk to you. And like, I don't want you to feel better. I'm unapproachable. That was an error on my part. And I apologize, whatever it is. So for me, it's making sure that, like I said, with that example with the students, when I was a resident, that's an unavoidable. For me, it's just unavoidable. I'm concise, I'm to the point, and I'm getting my tasks accomplished. But in the moments where I've maybe, unintentionally done or said something that created an emotion on someone else's end that I wanted to avoid, I acknowledge it very quickly. And I try to learn from that. And that's my way of preventing myself from being intentionally unapproachable.
Well, and that's even the same thing. You're just, you're not doing 8 weeks in a row of overnights anymore, hopefully. But like, if you were in a situation where you were like that, you're like, hey guys, I'm in the middle of this. So you know what? I realize that I might come across as abrupt or a little short, but I'm tired and I just want to get through this. So can we be super efficient? And like, that might intimidate some people, but you've kind of set the stage. You're like, you know what, once I get some sleep or 9 cups of coffee, it's going to be a very different story. But, so I think it's okay to kind of preempt some of that stuff too, but, or you can do what Sam does and just go work with like some of the nicest people in the world, go work with the carvers. And then it's like, presumably never an issue. I don't know. Do you have,
what is an argument?
Exactly. What? Is that like your solution to that, Sam? Is just work with carvers?
Yeah, pretty much. No, I do emotional check-ins, which is probably just related to knowing I probably struggle more, or I think I do, with like reading people sometimes. So like if someone's giving me where they're just like lashing out and I'm like, hey, are you okay? Is there something that I can do to make things easier? Do you need a snack or something like that? Like what's going on? Just going to cover all my
That's because Sam was like always a toddler when she was hungry.
Are you hungry? She's got Snickers.
I know that too. I start to get angry when things build and I haven't had lunch yet and it's 2:00 in the afternoon. I'm like, I gotta check myself. I need a snack before I start to like, so like I think
tossing Snickers out to everybody at work. I love it. I would work there. That sounds good.
How you keep happiness as you feed people.
A lot of truth to that.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I do those little emotional check-ins with people. And even like, if I have technical staff that are kind of giving me a little bit more sass than usual, I'll just be like, is everything okay? Like, are you doing okay today? And then sometimes that just takes them back and they're like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just having and they do their own mental check-in, and not that they need to tell me their business or I expect them to tell me their business, but at least it kind of just,
that's your subtle way of being like, hey, I'm noticing some extra angst, and which is nice when you build those relationships.
Yeah. You probably recognize that moment. Again, it wasn't, whatever was going on wasn't personal towards you. So it was easier for you to say, is there anything I can help you with, or how are you doing today?
Yeah. And especially when you know their personality, and historically they're not like that, something's going on. And we've all had those days where we're just not the best version of ourselves for whatever reason. So there's a little bit of that. Again, it's harder in a person that you've just met or you're just interacting, or there is a huge difference where you don't know that person personally because they're, your mentor or, a faculty member or something like that. And you have no grounds to know them more personally than that. Then it's harder to connect those dots.
But so it's nice to have somebody in your sphere, if you're the kind of person who could intimidate people. I'm looking at you and me, Kat. It's nice to have somebody who isn't intimidated by you, who can do what Sam does and just be like, hey, are you doing all right? Oh crap, was I being a jerk? I'm sorry. Because you're not intimidated by this technician, but maybe somebody else is. And so providing that perspective for them might be really helpful, because maybe a junior technician was like, oh, walking on eggshells around this person. So that's also helpful too, to just be like, hey, just so you know, I've noticed that, so-and-so is just like, they're walking 10 extra feet around you right now. And I don't think it's COVID related. Like, I think, maybe you just need to do a little like you said, that self check-in. And if you can create those relationships to be able to have that, like, hey, just FYI. So it's nice when you get to the point with somebody, you're not intimidated, but maybe you can help them try not to intimidate others too. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Other thoughts. I was laughing about like Kat talking about like people in like our sphere, and I laugh about that because I think, okay, so for you guys know me, and presumably not intimidated by me, but so with like being on the ACVEC executive board and that kind of thing, like there's going to be some other people coming up. Oh, okay. That's like, oh, that's so weird. Like, when I became president of ACVEC, nobody else was running, right? Like this isn't really all that impressive. Like this isn't that amazing of an accomplishment. Somebody said, hey, would you do this? And I was like, sure. And then it was like, I guess I'm doing this. Like it's kind of like Topher gives me a heart. It's like, no, it's a big deal. I'm like,
it is.
But it's funny because once you get to that point, and like you said, once you get to know somebody like Dan Fletcher, you're just like, oh no, he's not intimidating at all. That I think I benefit from like not being intimidated because I'm just not aware. I'm like, who's that? People are like, oh, that's so-and-so. He wrote this text. I'm like, who wrote that textbook? I read that textbook, but I don't know who the name on it is, Yeah. And so I think I have the luxury of just blissfully unaware of a lot of these situations. And so I don't know better than to not be intimidated. But I do find that to be kind of funny. Or it's like, oh, that person's really intimidating because their name is at the bottom of a letter that I got once when I was told that, I'm in the group, I'm in the club. You're like, oh, that person is like, yeah, it was just kind of random chance that that's who that is. It's not that big a deal. But it is kind of funny, like when you get in on it, you're like, really? It wasn't that big a deal. But from the outside looking in, it seems like a bigger deal.
What's funny about that is when I was taking my boards, you were president of the exam committee.
Oh, yeah.
And I like at some point mentioned like, that's actually my mentor. And they're like, oh, and I was like, trust me, she is the president because she is ethical. I gave no additional insight, maybe even less than the average participant.
She's very careful not to give it.
Yeah. I gained nothing out of that.
Ouch.
But it was funny because it was like, well,
no, I know.
Means no advantage.
But like the elevation, there was no, like you were automatically elevated, like you said.
Yeah.
Because of that title.
Yeah. Where for you,
and now you're president of the actual
president-elect. I don't have to do anything yet. Not for another year and a half. But it's funny how those things happen. I mean, the becoming president of the exam committee I was on the exam committee because somebody asked, hey, do you want to be on the exam committee? I was like, yep. And so I did that for a few years. And then we're like, okay, somebody else needs to take over exam chair, Bobbi. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. I mean, because I like the committee and, I think people look around and you're like, that is somebody who will get work done. And so you get to people ask you to do stuff because you do stuff. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but that's it. Like, that's my qualification is that somebody asked and I said, yes, like that's the trajectory of, and so for people to be like, ooh, that's a big deal. Like we went through this, like there was some Hunger Games style competition to get to be the president of the exam committee or anything. And you're like, no, it's really somebody asked and I was like, sure, that's it. That's what it took. So I think that perspective is really funny, but again, for you, me. And so it's not like, oh yeah, that's a thing that Bobbi did.
But and so whenever I received emails and your name is on it and it's all about the exam, for me, it's like, there's an email from Bobbi.
Right.
But everyone else sitting the exam, that's the person that's controlling the rest of my life.
Instant read every word, every detail.
Where you guys were like, delete.
Whatever, I'll just text her later.
I'll just ask her later. Call her tonight. What did that email say?
The email chain, like the VEX board, that's intimidating. Like getting on that and asking a clinical question. I will admit that I am intimidated of the email listserv.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair point.
Because the perception is that for me, the perception is if I present a case that I'm having issues with, are they going to think I'm a moron? And okay,
so for those listening who don't know what this is, so ACVEC has a listserv. So basically, they're an email that goes out to all of the diplomats that are on the listserv, which is most of us. And so somebody can be like, "Hey, I have this case, and I just want some insight." And so they'll send out an email, and then people give their feedback, which is supremely helpful.
That's amazing.
And sometimes it's like I sent one out. I was like, "Hey, I need to buy a new ventilator. What do people have, and what do they like?" So those kinds of things go out on this list. It's just it's a quick and easy way. Carl, you'll be getting those soon. It's a quick and easy way for everybody to just chat with each other. But it is a little bit like you do need to feel like I have enough expertise that I can comment on this. And so, yeah, I get that. Like, I didn't respond to a lot of those early on either. I was like, I don't know, let's let these people who know more than me answer.
What?
Yeah.
Like names on there too. You're like, oh shoot, so-and-so is responding.
Yeah. I mean, people read them and they listen and yeah. But there are absolutely times where, you know, you might be surprised that you know about this better than somebody else. You know, somebody like there's things that people are like, oh, I don't know. I encourage everybody to join the exam committee because it does give you perspective. You're like, oh, dang, that person knows a ton about this. And then you start talking about something else and they're like, oh, they don't know. And you're like, oh, okay, I know stuff too. Like we all have our things. We all have our things that, you know, become kind of your subspecialty, your niche that you get really good at. And then you start talking to people and you're like, oh, not everybody really actually understands all the bits and pieces to fibrinolysis like I do. Like I nerd out about that. And so I can feel really smart talking to people about that. But then they start, you know, talking about ophthalmology stuff. And I'm like, we can just enucleate it. It's fine. You know, there are other things where I'm just like, I don't really know. Or somebody starts talking nutrition and I'm just like, I know what macronutrients are. And food is good. That's what I know, you know, so, but other people where you're just like, oh, dang, they like, that's what they know. That's their thing. So I think that's the other thing that you provide, you get perspective where you talk to somebody who's like, this is their thing. They're so good at this. You talk to Dan Fletcher about CPR. Like, yeah, I'm not going to correct Dan on anything he says about CPR. Like that's his thing. But there are probably other things that because he's been focusing so much on recovery and CPR, like there's probably other things that I probably could be like, actually, Dan, it's this. And he's a lovely person. So he'd be like, oh, that's great. I you know, I appreciate that perspective.
We should probably tag him in this podcast, by the way.
Oh, I will. I'll send him an email. Like, we talked a lot about you today. You are going to have to listen for a good hour to get to that point, but oh, that's funny. This was fun. It was fun catching up. We're going to have to sing because my music button's not working. So I'm going to need you guys to sing.
Sing.
That's intimidating.
Ladies first.
Nope.
It's you guys should know the music to the pod. You guys all listen regularly, right?
Definitely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All 100. I'm on episode 99.
Episode 100. This is the 100th episode. So excited to have you guys all here. It was really great to catch up. We don't have any outro music, so you guys are just going to have to listen to us all saying goodbye. But so good to talk to all of you. I'm excited to have this up. This one will be also on YouTube, so we can see everybody's faces on this. So thanks for wearing a robe today, Kat.
It's a sweater.
It's a sweater. No. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And we'll catch you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Don't leave yet.
Not leaving. No.
We're not leaving.
Okay. Sam didn't know. She might.
Sam froze.
Sam, you froze.